He tore up my prenatal checkup slip in public and called me the poisonous woman who killed his first love. For 3 years, while I lived in a rented room with our twins, he was celebrating the fake heiress's birthday. When I stayed up late drawing design plans, he posed with his new love wearing jewels that cost a fortune. Until my wedding invitation arrived on his desk, he burst into the church with bloodshot eyes, only to see me smile and nod to the lawyer. Are the harassment evidences all in order? Opening the yellowed diary, he finally discovered the truth about his first love's death. And my groom quietly flashed his badge. Mr. Lucas, shall I ask you to step outside? Cold rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows, winding and twisting, uncannily like the face I cried into 3 years ago. From behind the heavy doors, the music of Vienna's Golden Hall drifted faintly through, Beethoven's Pathétique, oddly fitting. I stood outside the brilliantly lit lounge, my fingertips pinching that thin sheet of paper that somehow felt like 1,000 pounds, the prenatal test. It clearly stated, intrauterine early pregnancy, twin live embryos. It was mine and Lucas's children. My heart drums in my chest, not from joy but from fear. 3 months ago, his first love Vivian fell down the stairs and was gravely injured beyond. Everyone, including Lucas, concluded it was my poison-delivered hand born of jealousy. After all, I was the only one present at the time. After all, between him and me lay a marriage contract he signed under family pressure. I explained, I begged, in return I received only his deeper loathing and a cold get out. For these 3 months, I have been like a ghost, living under his hateful gaze. Tonight is the Lu Corporation's anniversary celebration. He has reserved the entire Golden Hall to entertain guests. I know this is a bad time, but the child's existence is like a ticking time bomb. I can no longer hide it. I drew a deep breath and pushed open the heavy carved wooden door. Inside, the scent of fine clothes and the gleam of jewels filled the air. Lucas stood beneath the crystal chandelier, surrounded by a cluster of business elites. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit, his posture upright, his features as sharp and handsome as when I first saw him. Only those eyes that had once shown me occasional warmth were now nothing but impenetrable ice. My arrival was like a pebble dropped into a still lake, shattering the harmonious atmosphere. Whispered murmurs rose, laced with undisguised contempt and curiosity. Lucas's gaze swept over me like an ice pick. A mocking curve curled his lips as he pushed through the crowd and walked toward me. Each step landed on the taut nerves of my being. Who told you to come? His voice was low, but it was enough to make the surroundings fall silent in an instant. Even the melody of the Pathétique seemed to withdraw. I tightened my grip on the prenatal test paper, my knuckles white, and mustered the courage to hand it over, my voice trembling. Lucas, I have something to tell you. He lowered his gaze, his eyes falling on the paper. He didn't take it, but asked coldly, what is this? What game are you trying to play now? It's the prenatal test. I forced the words out, I'm pregnant. It's twins. Before his words had even finished, a chorus of sharp intakes of breath rose around us. Lucas's face darkened suddenly, a storm cloud gathered in his eyes like the lead-up to an avalanche. He snatched the paper, his hand sudden and sure, and his gaze cut across the handwriting like a blade. Time seemed to freeze. A few seconds later he lifted his head, and the loathing and fury in his eyes threatened to burn me to ash. He gave a cold, harsh laugh that grated. Stella, you really are the most shameless, the most venomous woman I've ever seen. Killing Vivian wasn't enough, and now you try to chain me with such sordid tricks. Do you think that by carrying some bastard you can wipe away your sins? No, the child is yours. I blurted, tears surging uncontrollably. That night. Shut up. He cut me off sharply, his gaze so savage it felt like it wanted to tear me apart. Do you think I'd believe that? Vivian's barely cold in her grave and you can't wait to climb into someone else's bed? Or were you already shopping around for a new husband? In front of all the guests in the hall, he took the prenatal test, my fragile scrap of hope, and tore it to pieces, ripping it again and again. The white confetti of paper, like funeral snow, fluttered and drifted at my feet. Get out. He spat the word, cold and final. A crushing wave of shame and despair overwhelmed me. I stared at the shards on the ground as if I could see my and my unborn children's withered future. Blood rushed to my head and then receded, leaving a bone-deep chill. At that moment, a woman in a white gown, her makeup immaculate, the current popular actress Sunny, who'd recently been embroiled in rumors with Lucas, glided over to his side. Delicately, as if made of porcelain, she linked her arm through his and said softly, "Lucas, don't get upset over this. It's not worth it." She looked at me with unabashed contempt. "Miss Stella, today is an auspicious day for the Liu family. Please have some self-respect and don't make a scene here." The gazes around me stabbed like needles. Lucas let Sunny lean against him and looked at me as if I were a piece of trash. "Security. Throw this woman out." 2 security guards in uniform stepped forward on cue, one on each side, and took hold of me. I didn't struggle, I just stared hard at Lucas, at the man I had once loved with all my heart, at the father of the child in my womb. Rain mixed with tears blurred my vision as I was roughly dragged away from that gilded hell. Behind me, the music seemed to have switched back to a cheerful waltz, the guests' laughter and chatter rising again, as if the scene that had just unfolded were nothing more than a skit that had never happened. They dumped me on the cold, rain-slicked pavement behind the hotel, splashed mud soaked my thin dress. A faint twinge of pain pulsed through my lower abdomen, I instinctively cradled my belly and curled inward. The world was ice cold. But colder than the rain was the feeling of my heart dying. "Lucas, you abandoned me like an old shoe today. One day, I will make you regret what you did today." 3 years later. In the old district north of the city, a rented apartment of less than 60 square meters was filled with the warmth of everyday life. A few pots of pothos grew lushly on the windowsill, and the walls were covered with childish doodles. The sun was green, the puppy had wings. "Mom. Look. I drew a big airplane." Noah, the older brother in his teddy bear pajamas, came running over with a sheet of paper, his face flushed with excitement. Little sister Sophia sat on the carpet, carefully dressing her Barbie, her small mouth puckered. "Brother is silly, airplanes don't have rainbow colors, do they?" I watched them, and the softest part of my heart felt completely filled. These past 3 years, the 2 little ones are what carried me through countless nights of despair. Noah takes after him, the stubbornness in his brows and eyes the same. Sophia resembles me more, quiet and well-behaved. When I left the Liu family, I had nothing, no money, just scraping by with odd jobs. At the worst times I worked 3 jobs a day, cleaning office buildings in the early morning, waiting tables in the daytime, and selling at the night market in the evenings. When morning sickness hit hard, I hid in the bathroom and vomited until I was dizzy, then wiped my tears and went back to work. After giving birth to them, life became even tighter. Formula, diapers, rent, they felt like 3 mountains. I had to pick up the design major I'd neglected in college, staying up late to draw plans while the kids slept. A second-hand laptop accompanied me through one dawn after another. I remember once Sophia came down with a high fever in the middle of the night. I held her, led Noah by the hand, and hailed a taxi in the cold winter wind. Sitting on the chilly bench in the hospital corridor, I cradled my burning daughter and watched my son nodding off like a little chick pecking at rice. In that moment, I truly thought about giving up. But looking at their innocent faces, I told myself, "Stella, you cannot collapse." Gradually, some small companies began to take notice of the design drawings I made. The income was meager but a bit more stable. With the money I saved, I enrolled in an online advanced design course and worked desperately to improve myself. Perhaps God took pity on my hardship. By chance, one of my design submissions entered a minor industry competition, won a prize, and was noticed by a fairly sizable jewelry design studio. I became a contracted designer for the studio, gaining a steady income and relatively free time to care for the children. Life finally began to show a glimmer of light through the mud. "Mom, why are you crying?" Noah reached out his small hand and clumsily wiped my face. Only then did I realize I had been staring at the children, tears having slid down my cheeks without my noticing. I hurriedly wiped them away and, smiling, picked him up. "Mom isn't crying," sand got in my eyes. "Good boy, Noah. At that moment, the old phone on the table buzzed. It was Lynn, a colleague and friend from the studio. Her tone was excited. "Stella. Quick, look at the finance headlines. Oh my God, the Liu Group is holding a birthday banquet tonight at the Cloud Hotel for that fake heiress. What a spectacle. TSK, that diamond necklace reportedly went for $80 million at auction. Lucas really knows how to spend." I swiped the phone screen, and the photo from the pushed news headline stared back at me. The banquet hall was the height of luxury. Lucas in his bespoke suit remained the center of attention. Standing beside him was Vivian's sister, Serena, the one who, after I was driven out of the Liu family, quickly approached Lucas under the pretense of mourning her sister, and was accepted by the Liu matriarch as a foster granddaughter, becoming the woman who, in name, held the title of Miss Liu. The iridescent diamond necklace at Serena's throat stung my eyes. Once upon a time, Lucas had casually given me jewelry too, but I had never truly cared about their worth. Now it was clear those pieces were merely his routine largesse toward the title of Mrs. Liu, not affection for Stella the person. And the smug, affected smile on Serena's face aligned eerily with the provocative grin Vivian had aimed at me from the staircase 3 years ago. That day, it wasn't an accident at all. Vivian had deliberately thrown herself backward, shaping her lips to mouth to me. "See, who does he believe?" I instinctively clutched my lower abdomen. There, 2 little lives had once been nurtured, and there, on that rainy night, because of Lucas's ruthlessness and the upheaval that followed, they had nearly been lost. I closed the news page, pulled the children into my arms, and kissed their milk-scented hair. What's past is past. Lucas's glittering success, Serena's usurpation of what was mine, none of it concerns me anymore. My life now, with these 2 treasures and a career that's finally getting on track, is enough. But in some corner of my heart, the thorn called the truth remained deeply buried. I cannot carry the blame for Vivian's death forever. Not to prove anything to Lucas, but for myself, for my children. Their mother is not a murderer. I need the right moment. Days, like a wound-up clock, flew by in busyness and fulfillment. I gradually found my footing at the Firefly studio. I named it Firefly, meaning that even the smallest light can shine in the dark. My design style was distinctive, blending delicate emotion with unexpected vitality, and I slowly built up a reputation. I stopped using my given name and took my mother's surname, going by the pseudonym Astra. 3 years are enough to remake a person. I'm no longer the Stella who always clung to Lucas and yielded at every turn. The hardships of life and the role of being a mother have made me tougher and steadier, and my goals much clearer. I took on a rather challenging project, designing a wedding ring for a well-known dancer about to get married. The client's demands were exacting. It had to express the eternity of love, incorporate ballet elements, and avoid cliché. During that period I practically lived in the studio. Scrapped sketches piled into little mountains, coffee cups became my closest companions. Sometimes I was so exhausted I would nap face down on the table, and even in dreams it was still lines and the arrangements of gems. One late night I finally caught that fleeting inspiration. Using streamlined platinum to outline the ballerina's elegant point, the central diamond set where the tip of the toe meets the ground, surrounded by tiny pink diamonds like starlight splashed up from the dance. The moment the sketch was finished, I knew, this was it. Sure enough, after the proposal was submitted, the dancer and her fiancé were very pleased. The piece was titled Dance of the Stars, and once completed it caused quite a stir in the circle. Along with it, the name Astor began to be known by more people. The studio owner was a middle-aged woman who valued talent. Her name was Regina. She recognized my potential and started entrusting me with more important clients. My income rose steadily, and at last I could afford a larger, safer apartment, and I enrolled Noah and Sophia in the painting and dance classes they loved. Life seemed to be steadily moving in a beautiful direction. One weekend I took the kids to the newly opened aquarium. Noah excitedly pointed at the huge sharks, while Sophia was mesmerized by the beautiful jellyfish. I was laughing and taking their photos when I looked up and ran straight into a pair of deep, complicated eyes. Across the thronging crowd, Lucas stood there, flanked by 2 men who looked like bodyguards, as if inspecting one of the aquariums in his portfolio. He looked thinner, his features more defined, and his presence colder than 3 years ago, carrying a distant aloofness that warned others to keep their distance. He had obviously seen me too. His gaze lingered on me for a few seconds, with a faint, hard-to-place scrutiny and bewilderment. Perhaps my change had been too great, from the pale, timid figure in his memory to this unfamiliar woman in simple jeans and a white shirt, hair tied in a neat ponytail, eyes calm, and accompanied by 2 lively children. Noah followed my eyes and tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, why is that uncle staring at us?" I withdrew my gaze, crouched down, straightened my son's collar, and smiled. "Maybe the uncle thinks Noah is cute. Come on, let's go watch the dolphin show." I held the children's hands and walked past him calmly, without stopping, without looking back. I could feel that gaze following my back like a thorn, but I never glanced back. "Lucas, your world, I've long since left it behind." I just didn't expect that this chance encounter would seem to have cast a stone into his heart. A few days later, Regina called me into her office, her expression odd. "Astra, there's a big order, and they've specifically requested you to take charge." "What order?" "An invitation from the CEO office of the Lu Group, to design a birthday gift in celebration of an important female elder of Mr. Lucas." Regina paused and looked at me. "They insisted on you as the lead designer. The pay is very generous." "Lucas? He actually sought me out? Coincidence, or has he found something out?" Alarms were ringing in my head, but I kept my face calm. "Regina, the Lu family's order, our studio probably can't." "I know what you're worried about." Regina cut me off, lowering her voice. "We can't afford to offend the Lus. Besides, this would be a huge boost for your personal brand. I know you're talented and shouldn't be confined to a small circle. Treat it as an ordinary business collaboration, strictly professional." I was silent for a moment. Refusing would make me look guilty and might invite further probing. Accepting would inevitably create contact with him, and the risks were unknown. But maybe this was an opportunity? A chance to observe up close, even quietly gather certain information? I have never stopped looking for evidence about Vivian's death. "All right, I'll take it." I heard my own calm voice. The Lu Corporation headquarters towered into the clouds. Stepping in here again, my status was worlds apart. The receptionist checked the appointment and politely led me to the CEO's private elevator. The elevator walls were like mirrors, reflecting my current appearance, a proper business suit, light makeup, hair neatly pinned up, expression smooth and unruffled. The CEO's office was on the top floor with an excellent view that overlooked much of the city. After the secretary's announcement, I pushed the door open and walked in. Lucas sat behind a large desk, reviewing documents. Sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him, gilding his outline but failing to melt the hard lines between his brows. He looked up, his gaze sharp as a hawk's, aimed straight at me. That look carried appraisal, inquiry, and a trace of a complex emotion I couldn't read. "Astra, the designer," he said, his voice low, betraying no emotion. "Mr. Lucas, hello, I'm Astra from Firefly Studio." I stepped forward and placed the prepared design concept draft on his desk, my posture professional and detached. He didn't look at the plans right away. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, hands folded on the table, and kept studying me. "Have we met somewhere before?" "Just as I thought." I gave a small smile, met his gaze, and said calmly, "Mr. Lucas, you must be joking. Someone like me, how could I have had the chance to meet you? Perhaps I just have a common face." He squinted, let the subject drop, and picked up the design sheets to flip through them. I briefly explained my design concept. Under the theme of longevity and blessing, I fused traditional auspicious motifs with modern aesthetics. He seemed distracted as he listened, his fingers tapping the table from time to time. Suddenly he interrupted me. "The Astra designer looks quite young." I didn't expect such a steady design style. "Married?" The question was abrupt and personal. I sneered inwardly, but my face remained calm. Mr. Lucas, my private matters seem irrelevant to this design. Let's focus on the piece itself. He stared at me, his gaze suddenly oppressive. I just feel that the Astra designer looks familiar, especially the eyes. Very much like an old acquaintance. Who was the old acquaintance he meant? Vivian, or me? There are many people in the world who resemble one another, I replied lightly, steering the topic back to work. Regarding the choice of the center stone, I suggest. Throughout the entire meeting he kept probing in various ways, sometimes asking about my professional experience, sometimes hinting at my family background. I left no gaps, deftly deflecting every question or glossing over them with vague answers, always maintaining the cool distance of a professional designer. I could feel his irritation. He seemed determined to find some flaw in me, to confirm some suspicion, but my performance was flawless. In the end he seemed to give up, somewhat dispirited, and roughly agreed on the general direction of the design, asking me to go back and work out the details. When I left Lou's tower and climbed into my second-hand commuter car, I finally exhaled slowly and noticed tiny beads of sweat had formed in the palms of my hands. Confronting Lucas was more draining than working 3 straight nights of overtime. He was even more inscrutable than 3 years ago, those eyes seemed to see right through people. But I'm no longer the Stella I used to be. This encounter confirmed 2 things. First, he really does have suspicions about me, or rather about Astra. Second, regarding Vivian, his attitude isn't entirely unyielding. Those occasional flashes of complicated emotion, are they guilt? Guilty toward whom? It seems I need to hasten certain things. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I had saved for a long time but had never called. Hello, is this Lawyer Charles? I'm Stella. About the matter from 3 years ago, I'd like to formally hire you to start gathering evidence. Over the next few months I threw myself completely into work while secretly coordinating with Lawyer Charles's investigation. Lucas seemed tied up with a big project as well, and stopped fussing over the design drafts. Most communication went through his assistant. The longevity gift design for the Liu family's elders was completed without a hitch. On the day of delivery, Lucas's assistant called, unusually deferential, saying Mr. Lucas was very pleased and hoped we could work together long-term. I politely declined, using the excuse that the studio was adjusting its services and no longer took on private commissions. I had to minimize my contact with him as much as possible. Life seemed to return to its calm. Until one day, a tall figure appeared beneath the studio. It was Mason. A senior from my university and someone who had quietly liked me for many years. He was now a detective, his brow carrying a new steadiness and resolve. Over the 3 years, we kept in touch on and off. He was one of the few friends who knew about my darkest days and had reached out when I was at my lowest. He knew everything about my past, about Lucas, about the children, about that injustice. He looked at me, his gaze warm and steady. Stella, I've waited 3 years, watched you get back on your feet step by step. Now, will you give me a chance to take care of you, and of Noah and Sophia? I wasn't unmoved. Mason was a good man, honest, reliable, able to provide the children with a stable, healthy environment to grow up in. As for me, after everything I'd been through, I no longer harbored illusions about love, but I longed for a home, a whole home filled with warmth and security for my children. After careful consideration, I accepted his proposal. We didn't make a big deal of it, we planned a small, warm wedding and invited only our closest friends. The date was set for early autumn on a weekend with promising sunshine. Yet, by some means or another, a wedding invitation with a simple design that radiated happiness still found its way onto Lucas's desk. According to what Mason later told me, that afternoon a thunderous crash came from the CEO's office at Liu Corporation as something was smashed, followed by Lucas's roar like a trapped beast. He mobilized every resource he could, feverishly digging into everything about Astra, and the trail he uncovered led unmistakably to a name he had once discarded like old shoes, Stella. He must have finally discovered the existence of the children, by the timeline it fit, just over 3 years ago. That pregnancy test he'd torn to pieces after all wasn't a lie. On the wedding day, the sky was washed clear. The little chapel was adorned with flowers, sunlight streaming through the stained glass in mottled hues. There weren't many guests, but each brought a sincere blessing. Noah and Sophia, dressed as tiny flower attendants, stood beside me, excited and a little nervous. I wore a simple satin wedding gown, without much adornment, yet I felt utterly at ease. Mason wore his dress uniform, his posture straight, his gaze on me filled with tenderness. The minister stood before us and solemnly asked, "Mason, do you take Miss Stella to be your wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, to love, to care for, to honor, and to be faithful to her forever?" "I do." Mason's voice was steady and strong. The pastor turned to me. "Miss Stella, do you?" "I won't." The church doors were flung open with a crash, and a tall but disheveled figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, cutting off the pastor's question. Everyone turned around in astonishment. It was Lucas. His hair was disheveled, his shirt collar torn open, red veins webbing his eyes. There wasn't a trace of his usual composed dignity. He stared at me as if he wanted to devour me alive, and at the same time like a drowning man clutching the last bit of driftwood. His gaze was full of madness, remorse, and an almost hopeless plea. He took stumbling steps into the church, his footing unsteady, his voice hoarse. "Stella, you can't marry him." The guests murmured among themselves, and for a moment the scene froze. Mason instinctively stepped forward, placing me behind him. I looked at the man who had once dragged me into hell. Not a ripple stirred in me, only a settled, indifferent chill. I gently tapped Mason's arm, signaling him to relax. Then I turned to Charles, the lawyer in the black suit who had been waiting for some time, and gave a slight nod. Charles understood, expressionless as he stepped forward and handed a document to Lucas, his voice clear and calm. "Mr. Lucas, hello. This is a lawyer's letter my client, Miss Stella, has instructed me to deliver to you. In light of your past actions and today's behavior, you have caused serious disruption to my client's life and constituted harassment. Please show restraint and leave immediately. Otherwise, we will take further legal measures." A lawyer's letter? Harassment? Lucas seemed frozen. He stared at me in disbelief, then at the cold piece of paper before him, and did not take it. Lawyer Charles shoved the letter into his hand, then took from his briefcase a diary that looked a bit old, its cover yellowed. "Also, Mr. Lucas," Charles's voice was devoid of any emotion, "regarding Ms. Vivian's accidental death 3 years ago, my client has submitted some new evidence to the police. This diary of Ms. Vivian's might help you understand part of the truth." "A diary?" Lucas's pupils suddenly contracted. His hands trembled as he took the diary. He couldn't wait to open it. The familiar handwriting met his eyes, words filled with love, calculation, and, in the final moments, twisted jealousy, each line like a sharp knife, piercing the truth he had believed for 3 years. On the last page of the diary was clearly written Vivian's plan, how to deliberately provoke me, how to throw herself down the stairs to frame me, because she could not bear that even if Lucas did not love me, I still carried the title Mrs. Liu. She intended to use her own death to ensure I would never find peace, and to make Lucas hate me forever, to remember her. No. Impossible, this can't be real. Lucas staggered backward, his face as white as paper, the diary slipping from his hand. He looked up at me, his gaze shattered, filled with immense shock and devastating pain. "Stella, I didn't know, He tried to rush forward, but was stopped by Mason's solid arm. Mason silently showed his police badge, his expression grave, his voice low but carrying an unquestionable authority. "Mr. Lucas, Miss Stella is now my wife. Please leave immediately and do not disrupt our wedding. Otherwise, I will have no choice but to ask you to come to the station to assist with an investigation on charges of disturbing the public order and alleged harassment." The word wife fell on Lucas like a last funeral bell, shattering all his hope. He glanced at my cold face, at Mason standing between us, then at the guests whose looks ranged from scorn to pity, and finally let his gaze settle on the open diary on the floor, pages filled with sins. He looked like a broken puppet drained of all strength, his tall frame bent, he gave a sob like a wounded beast and could no longer form a word. At last, under the silent scrutiny of everyone present, he staggered out of the church, one step at a time, utterly disheveled. The sunlight stretched his solitary shadow out long and long until it vanished beyond the doorway. Silence returned to the church. The priest cleared his throat and looked at me kindly. "Miss Stella, please continue the ceremony we began. Do you take Mr. Mason to be your husband, to have and to hold, in good times and bad, in wealth and in want, in health and in sickness, to love him, to cherish him, to respect him, and to be faithful to him always, until death do you part?" I turned and looked at Mason at my side, his gaze steady, then glanced down at Noah and Sophia in the pews, eyes wide, half understanding yet full of trust as they looked up at me. I drew a deep breath, a calm, happy smile blossoming from my heart across my face, and answered clearly and firmly. "I do." Life after the wedding was calm and warm. Mason was an excellent husband and father. He treated the children as his own, giving them a paternal love and sense of security they had never known. We moved into the small courtyard assigned by the police station, not large, but filled with laughter. My design career also flourished. The name Astor gained greater recognition within the industry. I no longer ran from the past, I turned those pains and struggles into inspiration and depth for my designs. I was no longer a vine clinging to anyone, but a tree that could shelter and protect myself and my family. News about the Luke Corporation still surfaced occasionally in the financial press. It was said that Lucas sank into a long bout of despondency after my wedding, and Lou's stock price had its fluctuations. But he was Lucas, after all, the master of a business empire, and he ultimately weathered it, only becoming more taciturn, avoiding women, like a machine that knew only work. He tried to reach me in every way, sending expensive gifts to the children, all of which I returned unopened. Long letters he wrote I didn't even read, I fed them straight into the shredder. His confessions, his pain, meant nothing to me. Some wounds cannot be healed. Some mistakes, once missed, last a lifetime. One autumn afternoon I took the children to the park to sketch. Noah and Sophia chased and played on the grass while I sat on a bench watching them, a faint smile at the corner of my mouth. In the distance, beneath a sycamore, a familiar figure stood. It was Lucas. He watched us from afar, afraid to come closer. More than 3 years had carved deeper lines into his face, the eyes that once brimmed with arrogance and indifference now held only endless remorse and desolation. He saw the stubborn look on Noah's face as he ran, so much like his own as a child. He saw Sophia's dimple when she smiled, faintly bearing my old reflection. His gaze and mine met briefly in the air. I did not look away, nor did I show any emotion, I simply looked at him calmly, as if at a stranger on the street. Then I stood up and walked toward the children. "Noah, Sophia, it's time to go home." "Mom, just a little longer, please." "Be good, Daddy's getting off work early today. We'll go home and make him something delicious." "Yay. I want sweet and sour ribs." I held the hands of the 2 children and, facing the setting sun, walked step by step toward home. The warm afterglow stretched our shadows long, intertwining them so they could never be separated again. From start to finish, I never looked back at the lonely figure beneath the phoenix tree. My past was already buried in that rainy night when he tore up the pregnancy test. My present and future are the warmth of the children pressed into my palm, the lamp that stays lit at home, and the man in uniform who will be a solid support for me and the children. Lucas, between you and me, the matter was settled long ago. Do not disturb, do not yearn. If we are each well, that is the end.